Hello. Hi, welcome. It's week 9. My name's James J. I'm going to be kicking us off with a couple of poems by Joy Harjo. Joy Harjo is the Poet Laureate of the United States currently. And this poem's called Memory Sack. That first cry opens the earth door. We join the ancestor road. With our pack of memories slung slack on our backs, we venture into the circle of destruction, which is the circle of creation, and make more. Short little poem by Joy Harjo. She writes all sorts of styles. Some of them are shorter, almost like song-like, and some are quite long, more narrative poems as well. This is another one by Joy Harjo called Road. We stand first in our minds, and then we toddle from hand to furniture. Soon we are walking away from the house and lands of our ancestral creator gods to the circles of friends, of schooling, of work, making families and worlds of our own. We make our way through storm and sun. We walk side by side or against each other. The last road will be taken alone. There might be crowds calling for blood or a curtained window by the leaving bed. It is best to not be afraid. Lift your attention for the appearance of the next road. It might be through a family of trees, a desert, or rolling waves of sea. It's the ancient road the soul knows. We always remember it when we see it. It beckons at birth. It carries us home. It's Joy Harjo there. As I mentioned, she's the Poet Laureate of the United States right now. I'm going to this is from her newest book. I'm going to read a little back information on her. Joy Harjo is an international renowned performer and writer of the Muskogee Creek Nation and was named United States Poet Laureate in 2019. The author of 8 books of poetry and a memoir, Crazy Brave. Her many honors include the Jackson Poetry Prize, the Ruth Lilly Prize, a Guggenheim Fellow, and numerous others that goes on for a while there. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where she is a Tulsa Artist Fellow. And one of the things I think, there are many things I find fascinating about Joy Harjo. I absolutely love her work. And she's also a pretty seriously talented musician as well. So I know there are a few folks in this class that also have a strong music background. So that's I think that it's great that we see someone who's a very good musician and also has reached this tremendous honor of being the Poet Laureate of the United States as well. So combining both those skills and doing them very well. So in fact, I'm just going to put up a little picture. She also has great tattoos as well. I had a chance she used to do a lot of work around northern Arizona region. That's where I've lived for years and years in Flagstaff. And she was doing that even, before she was well known, when she was just a teacher. I think she really is the real deal when it comes to a poet. At least I think that she's a performer. She's tremendously involved in promoting poetry and literacy and has been just doing that for decades and decades. So that's the picture on the back cover with her saxophone there. And she's just an incredibly generous person with her time and her skills and her ability as both a teacher and a poet. So I wanted to get Joy Harjo to kick us off for this week. And we are in week 9, as I mentioned. And we're sort of, we're at that spot in the semester I always think about where you're a little more than halfway. And it's easy for the semester to kind of, bog down a little bit. I don't know if there's anything that's typical this year, but typically we'd have a little bit of a kind of a slowing, and it can get kind of not so much monotonous. That initial energy and that from the beginning of the semester has we've used all that up, and now we're a little over the halfway mark in the race. And but we're not quite to that end. We can't see the finish line for the semester yet. So it's easy to sometimes get slogged down in this part of the semester. So I wanted to kind of change things up at least a little bit, or I'm trying to find other ways of trying to energize us for this class. And I figured Joy Harjo is a good one. If you're still at the point where you're thinking about a person that you want to check out their recitations for assignment 4, you're still looking for hearing a person doing a reading and then responding to that, you're searching through YouTube, that kind of thing, I bet you'll find some good stuff in Joy Harjo. So I've got her in the module. I have copies of her of the poems I just read included, so that that'll be kind of potentially something else to look at. So yeah, let me what I think I'll do as far as on the housekeeping for this week is I'm going to go through and I'll add a little bit more information regarding paper 3, the replying to Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot. And I talked about that a bit last week, but there's a couple more things I wanted to add as I was finishing up some of the last papers and just had a chance to reflect a little bit further. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm going to do a little housekeeping as far as with grades and where everyone's at and some of that, that part of the course that's the sort of necessary thing that has to happen in a university class. So I'll mention that a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the overall skills that we've been hitting and going after. And and we'll just proceed. I'll start talking a little about paper 4 as well, because that's coming up due on the 23rd. All right, so that's October 23rd that one's due. Hopefully that's coming along pretty well for you. And then also I'll start transitioning us more actively towards our last part of the semester, which is we have 3 formal assignments will be 3 different poems that we'll end up writing in response to different art forms as well. So we're moving through that creative nonfiction section now. It happens quickly. We're moving through that, and we're moving towards the poetry. So this is kind of a transition week for us, and my comments will reflect that accordingly, I suppose. So thinking about that paper 3 with Beckett and Waiting for Godot. That as I said, I think that it was a fairly tough assignment. I think people did a pretty good job with the tough assignment. So that continued to be the case when I had made my comments last week. I was about 2/3 of the way through, and I finished through the last third. And I think the folks that had the most fun with that were the ones that sort of let loose on that notion of control. That is to say, that you're willing to kind of jump in and spring forth and see what happens. I think that's probably pretty good advice as a writer anyway. Is whenever you're responding to something, especially if you're not quite sure what to do, start your writing. Get the words down on the page. Whether you're typing or writing by hand, however you get them down on the page, get the words down on the page where you can start working with them and shaping them, molding them. Surprise yourself. See where it goes. Abandon some of those ideas of trying to control the directions. Absolutely. Rather, I think it's important to stick with more of the skills that we've been talking about, whether it be using specific imagery, the idea of showing as opposed to telling, writing with active verbs. So a lot of these language skills and a lot of those mini lectures that I've been putting into the modules, those things probably can guide you when you're not sure what else to do. And I think it's okay to not be exactly sure what you're going to do. I know that we tend to think about when we're going to write something that we have to chart everything out exactly on how it's going to proceed. Some folks it works well for them. If you're one of those people, then by all means keep charting things out. But I think for a lot of us, we'll have a little bit of a plan or a notion, maybe a few things on a note in your notes as far as sketching things out. And then we'll kind of just hop in with that leap of faith, so to speak, as a writer, and we'll get going and see where things take us. So yeah, the packet 3 though, the papers 3, they continue to do pretty well. So I do very much appreciate everyone being willing to jump in with a tough assignment and just going with it. So that brings me to thinking about assignment 4, where we're having nonfiction in response to reading by one author. Right. So hopefully at this point, we still, depending on when you check this module, you still have maybe a few days to go. Where, like I had mentioned before, October 23rd is when that paper is due. So hopefully you've had a chance to enjoy looking for different readings and recitations by different authors that you enjoy. As I said, you could pick someone, I guess, that you absolutely hate, but why make it worse for yourself? Because you'll probably end up watching it a couple times, right, and thinking about that. So hopefully someone that you really enjoy, you really love their work, and this is a chance for you to then write a review. What could be, I mentioned that sort of range of things that you could do with this assignment 4. You could do a pretty straightforward review, I think, in some ways summarizing. Or mostly summarizing what happened in their reading, what they're up to, what their talents are, and that type of thing. So you could end up on that side of things with the idea that it would be nice to potentially work on this thing, craft it very well, and then try to land it in some sort of either online journal or paper journal that that would print these sort of reviews. So you can think of it as an audience beyond this class, potentially. I'd mentioned with Beckett, with Waiting for Godot, that thing's been around for 70 years, and people have spent their whole careers writing about this play about nothing, right? So to some extent, it made more sense to give small amount of summary, but really, if you're going to write an interesting and engaging piece, to introduce yourself with that first person as a character in your own creative nonfiction, and write about as far as your potential setting when you were writing this, and make it much more subjective. That is to say, much more personal, right? That made sense with assignment 3, with something that had been that has received such praise, both positive and negative, right? So, but with assignment 4, you'll be picking the person that you respond to, and they probably won't have 70 years of literary criticism surrounding them. They might, it's entirely up to you. But you can either stick with more of a traditional sort of review, and leaving yourself out as far as using that first person I, leaving that out, or you can do this something similar to what you did in paper 3. If that strategy worked for you, including yourself thinking about how the first person I, operates within your creative nonfiction, by all means do that again. If that was successful for you, you like doing that, then pop in there and do that. So there's as with any of these creative nonfiction assignments, the main thing is to think about how you are lending your voice through that. If you're going to introduce yourself with that first person I, how you're lending your voice into these assignments. So something to think about there. I hope that folks are finding that to be pretty enjoyable. I think that as with our second assignment, so referring to our second assignment where we wrote flash fiction in response to visual arts, we had to go out and find the virtual museum that you wanted to visit, and then respond to that. Hopefully that search was part of the joy of putting together that assignment. I'm hoping that's the case with this assignment 4, where you're responding to a reader or someone reciting and either reading fiction, poetry, whatever it might be, but one individual author. Okay, so hoping that's coming together for you. If you're getting stuck or anything like that, by all means shoot me an email, send me a message. Maybe I can help get you going. I know that it's actually been kind of nice now that we're through, like I say, we're week 9. I've had a chance to email back and forth with quite a few folks, call on the phone a little bit, that kind of thing. And it's been good to have this dialogue back and forth. And so if you are getting stuck, let me know. And but do make sure to give yourself several days heads up, so that I can get responses back to you. I can't always get back to you in the same day. It might be several days, in fact. So make sure to give yourself enough space and enough time to get it done. So assignment 4. This would be the part in the class I say, is there any questions? I look around for any eyes that are as far as our expressions that say, hey, I'm ready to go right now. Let's get this thing written. Or there's some expressions and some trepidations, perhaps. Let's talk about this a little bit more. Let's smooth out some of these details here. So I will, without being able to have that sort of back and forth, I will stop speaking about paper 4 now, and make sure to see me with any questions, that type of thing. So I'll check my notes here, and so we talked about paper 4. Yeah, and then our transition to what we're going to be up to for the remaining part of the semester. I've included also in this module some work, an essay on poetry by Steve Kowit. Steve Kowit, I think, is an absolutely fascinating writer. He lived in San Diego for a long time. He passed away a few years ago. But he was a tremendously good teacher. I had a chance to sit in with a few workshops with him probably, must have been 25 years ago sometime. Genuinely kind person, and he, in fact, one of the things that I liked even 25 years ago, he was a successful poet in his own right, but he also had several students that he was incredibly proud of, that had gone on to have more promising career, or not promising, how should I say, as far as they'd had careers where they'd already won bigger awards and achievements than he had. And he was incredibly proud of that. In fact, that was one of the things, talking with him one-on-one, that I thought was really great about him as a writer and as a teacher. That Kim Adonisio was one of his students, and she's gone on to have a very successful career. Dorian Lau was another one, and he was just so incredibly proud of them. So I always enjoyed talking to him about writing and about poetry, and one of the things that he did is as far as that he with as a great teacher, he was able to translate that onto the page and come up with a series of essays in his own book on writing. I almost had to spy it for this class, but I figured we're only going to use a couple of chapters here, so I didn't want you to have to spend the money as well as the time as far as trying to track things down, during the pandemic. So I'm just going to include those in the module. But if you are interested in this and wanted to pick up more, the whole book is great. So this is the book right here, in the palm of your hand. And it refers to William Blake. I mentioned William Blake earlier in the semester, but that's from a William Blake line, holding the universe in the palm of your hand, in grains of sand, and that type of thing, that type of metaphor. So that's kind of circling around. But we'll be reading some Steve Kowit and getting us started with the poetry section. I'm going to say, as far as with the poetry section, it's been my experience in the past that folks either look forward to this quite a bit or they dread it quite a bit. Some people are somewhere in between, but it seems to not. But the writing of poetry seems to not have much of a neutral response. Some people might have been waiting for this the whole semester. Some might have been, like, hey, I'm good with prose, I'm good with the fiction or the nonfiction, but it's a bit of a step. So with that in mind, that's what I'm using Steve Kowit to help us make that transition and to give us some specifics. So if you're used to writing poetry and that's just something that you're inclined to do, I've got plenty of stuff for you. It'll be challenging and it'll be hopefully allow you to do some really good writing and enjoy doing that writing. If it's something where poetry is just something that it's not for me, or at least hadn't been for you in the past. And what I would encourage you to do is be adventurous. I've got a strategy for that. I've got some specifics to get you started with that. So take that leap with me, and we'll see how you do. I think you'll do well. So yeah. So I'm going to mention, as far as a couple of things from Steve Kowit with that reading, the reading for the week, and what he mentions, and he actually starts out. The reason why I picked this chapter from this book and included it in the module is that he spends a bit of time talking about narrative poems, that is, story-like poems, and so I think that makes a little easier transition. You don't have to, with any of these assignments, you don't have to write a more narrative poem, but I figured that would be a good transition, and we take all of our writing skills that we've been using throughout the semester, and we transfer those onto the poem, and we'll figure that out. So a narrative poem just seemed to make make a logical leap. But I'll have other stuff too. If you're used to writing more lyric type of poems or more short fragmented poetry, we can certainly do that too, and that's a lot of fun. But he mentions the idea of in here of the narrative, getting the story told. He also has the notion of narrator and author. Conflict and suspense. These are all terms that sound very similar to what we've been reading in our flash fiction and some of the handouts, or the module handouts that we've been doing with the creative nonfiction. So there shouldn't be anything that seems completely different to you. The only thing that will be different if we look at a poem is the notion of the line breaks. So if I go like this, I'm going to shove one or more of these at the camera. I think that'll be all for the day of doing that, but because I know it's hard to read. But if you look at that, if I get it placed right there, you see it. Look at that page. If I were to say to you, is that a poem or is that a novel that starts that? You'd say that's a poem, right? I'd say, how do you know? And the reason you'd know is because it's in line breaks, right? So we're used to seeing poetry in line breaks. So I'll talk a little bit about line breaks and how to break some strategies for breaking the line. If you haven't written poetry before and that seems totally foreign to you, don't get real concerned about that. If you've written a lot of poetry before and you think you know exactly how to break lines, be open to other strategies too, right? There's all sorts of theories and ideas on how to break a line in poetry, and I'll get those to you. And then I'll be curious too. What I'll do then is I'm going to see where, once we get to that part of the assignment and we get to that first set of poems, I'm going to see where everyone's at, kind of get either feedback from folks with emails, or either phone calls, that type of thing, or the actual writing itself. When I get a chance to see your writing, that's where I actually get to learn the most as far as with where you're at and what you might want to work on and that type of thing. So once we do that, I'll make the kind of final adjustments as far as with my lectures through the rest of the semester, and then I'll probably start getting these things going to you fairly quickly. So I'm hoping at this point, as far as we're at week 9, that kind of a method to the madness, to use a cliche, is starting to emerge as far as that setting up these writing assignments. So they build on each other, they build, and then they have a little variation, build, a little variation, right? And these things you pick up in kind of these accumulations of skills, and some get emphasized more, some drop off a little bit, some will hopefully come back. And so hopefully there's a kind of a strategy that's emerging. At least that was the idea. As much as there's not a whole lot of certainty in this year, I was trying to have certain strategies that would help us out, so that if you proceeded through the modules, it would kind of gather up, and sometimes folks would be writing in their strong suit, and kind of feeling confident in that way. And then sometimes folks would be at a spot where they're like feeling a little lost. That's okay, right? That's part of learning how to pick up new writing skills and whatnot. So hopefully we've kind of cycled through those things, and then what I'll do is I'll see where we're at with the next batch. I had one change up I think I might make in one of the assignments that I think will be, I was going to say make it more easy. That's not the goal, because I don't necessarily want to have things be easy. But as far as approachable, as far as something that might be a little different, because now we're all looking at screens a lot. So when we get towards that, what I'm thinking towards either the last poem or the second to last poem, what I'm going to do is ask you to write that by hand, and then kind of send me instead of typing it up, that type of thing, and then just send me an image of the handwritten poem. I think I want to change that up, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to do that on. So I'll have that put together as we kind of figure these things out. And hopefully the idea is we've hit by the end of the semester, you've written in a variety of different styles, different ways, and using your writing skills. And I know that folks are coming from all sorts of backgrounds in this class, as far as that for the most part people aren't creative writing majors. There are a few in here right now, but people aren't generally creative writing majors. They're taking degrees elsewhere. So I'm trying to figure out how to make this useful for a variety of different backgrounds. So I'm trying to get you to writing in as many different skills, reading as many different things as possible, responding to different art forms, so we're really stretching your sense of imagination and vision, and figuring out also how to get our own voices incorporated in our writing too. So at the beginning of the semester in the syllabus, I mentioned that I want this to be one of the most important classes that you end up taking, and useful classes, and hopefully enjoyable classes throughout your writing career, something that's useful not only in this 16 weeks, but it's something that you can use in other classes, and then hopefully even well after you graduate and you're in your own professions, that the writing skills are useful, and then also that it's something that hopefully you might have an inclination that whether it be writing flash fiction or writing poetry, whatever it is, that maybe it's something you want to keep doing and continue to do. And it also might be something that will if you're traveling, when we get to the point where we all travel again, and you're traveling and you're in a different town, and you see some sign for a play, or if you see a museum and you think, I'm going to walk in there, that's something for me too. That's something that I can also check out and have skills that can be useful in processing that experience. So that's what I'm hoping that where we're at. I know also I'll kind of move towards the wrap up and say, I know that we're in that tough part of the semester where we're week 9. We can't quite see the finish line yet. We've been doing it for these classes for a little while, so I would encourage you, not only in this class, but in other classes, to kind of just keep plodding, take it one assignment at a time. You can't quite see that finish line yet, so don't feel overwhelmed whether it's in this class or in others where you think, I have so many assignments left to do, and if that distance is far away. Don't be looking for that finish line yet. Just be looking from week to week. Just be looking for what's the next assignment, what's the next thing. We still have several more weeks before we can kind of put our heads down and get to that finish line. So just take it 1 week at a time. Keep plugging away. Don't get behind on assignments. Keep going. I think in this class, as I mentioned with the writing assignments, especially considering all the adaptations we've had to make and that we're doing this class exclusively online, it's been fantastic writing. I've you know I take my hat off, but I don't wear one. But my hat's off to you. I'm proud of you. That type of thing, I would say at this point. So keep it up. We'll get there soon enough. All right. Keep tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Hit me for any questions, especially with assignment 4 is coming up on October 23rd. October 23rd. So get that thing in and get that done, and hopefully you enjoy it. Okay. Have a good one.